Welcome to B2B Commerce Corner. Commerce Corner is a sub-series of the E-Commerce Edge podcast discussing all things B2B commerce through the lens of agencies, consultants, merchants, and more. Enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the pod. It is my great pleasure to welcome Ashley CHING from Inhaven. Welcome, Ashley.
Hey, nice to see you today.
It is so nice to see you again. We had a chance initially to meet each other at B2B Online in Chicago, and we were on a panel together, and I enjoyed speaking with you then. I've had a chance to learn more about your business since then. I've done a LinkedIn post about you, and I wanted to get you on the podcast because what you are doing over at Inhaven in the B2B space is super cool, super novel. I absolutely love it, and I think people can learn a ton from you today. So thank you for taking the time with me.
Thanks, Jason. Glad to be here.
Before we get into what Inhaven does and how you do what you do, and because you're clearly very passionate about it, you said you've got some new functionality coming out on the website in September, so I'd love to talk about that too. But before we get into that, what sucked you? I know a little bit of your backstory, but I'd love to hear it from you, directly from you. What sucked you into this wonderful world of B2B e-commerce in the first place? Because I tell you, everybody has a different route into this gig. And so it's always interesting to hear the backstory, the elevator pitch of how people even got into our industry. So what's yours?
Yeah, I would have had no idea I'd be here today about 5 years ago. So I am a lifelong merchant. I spent a lot of my career actually at Tiffany & Company, went out to Asia with them, ran Asia merchandising, came back and eventually ran global merchandising operations in New York for the global company. And I was not only responsible there for the assortments in the stores, but also for their brand standards, brand presentation standards. So making sure that when a guest entered our stores in Singapore, to Cincinnati, Ohio, that they would have a very similar experience, and also online as well. The marketing messages were presented right up front. So I really got quite familiar with sort of presentation standards in addition to all the general merchandising of inventory management, assortment management, et cetera. And then I left Tiffany and I went to work for the Home Depot for one of their private brands called the Company Store, which is e-commerce only. And there I really got ingrained in the home furnishing world. I traveled the world to different textile manufacturers from China to India. And while I was there, I was also raising a very young family. I've got 4 young kids. And so when we travel, we no longer stay in hotels. We need to have multi-bedroom stays and kitchens. So we stay in vacation rentals. And the experience of staying in these vacation rentals was quite inconsistent and quite frustrating. We would book places on listing channels like Airbnb and Vrbo. We thought we found the perfect location. Pictures look great, but we would show up to terrible beds, missing pots and pans. And so I started to, as a lifelong merchant, I'm naturally curious, how do people source things for these homes? So I started to talk to dozens and dozens of property managers and owners. And ultimately what they said to me was, sourcing's a nightmare. I have no idea what I'm buying. What works in my own home doesn't work in a vacation rental. I kept hearing the word durable. Things need to be more durable. The guests can be quite hard on these homes. The other word I heard a lot of is I need checklists. I don't have time for search and filter, get 50,000 results and figure out what's going to work in my vacation rental. I want checklists. I want to make quick, fast decisions. And then the other key theme I heard was it's a nightmare replenishing these properties. My housekeeping teams will reach out. It's really hard to keep track of the inventory in the homes. And so a light bulb went off in my head and I thought, wow, here's a growing industry. At the time, Airbnb was just IPOing. They had 4 million hosts on their platform. And I thought, wow, this is a huge need. I can do this. I can launch a B2B site for them, make shopping and replenishing a lot more efficient, knowing where to get more durable commercial grade supply. And so that's when I started. We launched Inhaven in September of 22 and it's seen just great traction.
Wow. What a story. And I love the fact that effectively you were your customer in the sense that, you were your customer's customer in the sense that you were in the market, you knew what the market was lacking, you could identify a real definitive, clear challenge that you could then articulate, you could put into a very clear mission statement that you said, hey, I'm experiencing this problem. I've got 4 young kids. I'm trying to get away. I'm trying to relax. I'm trying to have a good time. I'm trying to enjoy these places that we're renting, and we're renting the whole place. And yet there's such an inconsistent standard. And as a heavy Airbnb and short-term stay user myself and my wife, we don't have kids, but we got a dog. And
Mhm.
one of the things when we first moved to Mexico is because we've been in Mexico for a year and a half, so we stayed in a tremendous number of Airbnbs. We traveled for all of 2023. We did 20,000 kilometers around Mexico in 2023 and stayed in tens, dozens of Airbnbs, short-term stays, even apartments that were being used as Airbnbs, etc. And we found exactly what you found. And the other challenge we found was that there was great inconsistency around the amenities on offer over and above the chattels. So some places allow dogs, some places don't. Some places have great Wi-Fi, some places don't. Some places have a place for you to park your car, some places don't. So when you combine the massive variation in chattels and furnishings combined with the massive variation in other amenities and over and above the chattels, you can get, even within the same price range, we discovered you can get a wildly different experience. And I'm guessing that was part of the motivation too. It's, hey, we think we can bring some consistency to this model whereby it's more like a hotel in the sense that if I go to a Hilton, it doesn't really matter what country I'm in, doesn't really matter where I'm at, I can be assured of a minimum consistent standard of the experience that I'm going to have when I go to one of these global chains. And it feels like a little bit of what your vision was is, hey, we want to bring a similar level of consistency to short-term rentals as what the big, large chains have. But the big, large chains have massive procurement departments and massive budgets, and they've got preferred supplier agreements and everything else to ensure this consistency. But these small individual players do not. So we want to bring the capability and the same level of buying power. We're going to aggregate the buying power together across all these individual owners that might only own 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 properties that these massive global conglomerates have, and we're going to bring it all together under one roof. That feels like the type of experience you were trying to create.
Yeah. So I have two thoughts there, and you're right on track. One is I came at this from a guest facing perspective, right? I was just frustrated with the inconsistencies. But what I found since launching Inhaven, which is a big revelation for me, is yes, it's great for the guests, but actually the host, the property manager, wants it more. These are small business owners, right? They are, running around with their heads cut off because they've got a million different things on their plates. The last thing they want to be doing is dealing with inventory issues. And so they've actually pushed for this more. And what's really interesting about this industry is, and I should say there's 25,000 property managers alone just in the US. So it's highly fragmented. But what's really interesting to me is that where we are in the vacation rental industry is not very different than where the hotel industry was 30 or 40 years ago. If you can recall, in the 70s and 80s, economy cars became much more affordable. So you could suddenly afford a Ford Taurus or Toyota Camry. At the same time, the government was building out this interstate highway system across the US. People could now afford cars and afford to travel. And so during that time, you saw all these hotel motels pop up along the highway system. And the big challenge at the time, from a guest perspective, was they didn't really know what they were walking into. And there were a lot of quality issues. You would arrive in these hotel rooms with these colorful, comfortable, lumpy mattresses, etc. And so in the 90s, there were some major changes that happened in the hotel industry. And one of the biggest changes was the launch of the Heavenly Bed that Westin launched. So Westin declared that good sleep was no longer a luxury, it was a standard. And so they went to all white bedding, they invested in their mattresses, and then this carried over into the bathroom and all the amenities. And everyone in the hotel industry, from the Holiday Inn, Best Westerns, all the way up to the Ritz-Carltons, caught on. And they started to set standards. So now when you book a hotel and you are going to check into a Best Western, you don't expect to have the same quality of bed that you would expect in a Ritz-Carlton. And so, based on the chain scale and what your needs are for that stay, you have expectations and you know what you're walking into. And so the vacation rental industry is in a very similar position. From a technology perspective, just like we had mass produced cars back in the day that allowed everyone to travel, Airbnb has made it very easy for people to list their homes and for guests to find these homes. From a policy perspective, COVID changed everything. Suddenly, vacation rentals became very attractive and people became very familiar with the industry. Now, vacation rentals are 24% of global lodging spend. So this is no longer a cottage industry. This is here to stay and it continues to grow. But what they're missing, now we're experiencing all these quality challenges. So they're missing those standards. And so at Inhaven, what we do is we set standards around the comfort of the stay, the bed, the bath, and the kitchen. Places of the home where people aren't looking for unique experiences. No one wants a unique sleep experience, right? They don't want a round bed. They want a standard bed. They want great sheets. They don't want a unique cooking experience, right? They want their standard cookware sets and utensils. And so that's where we feel that we can set standards, and we can set standards across a portfolio of homes. And then we partner with these hospitality teams, these local hospitality teams that bring that local service to life and make that guest experience great. And combined, that's who we're partnering with to really elevate the industry and create standards with these local professional property managers.
Wow. And it feels like you're bringing a level of consistency to short-term rentals that even some hotels have lost. So we've traveled extensively across the US, we've traveled extensively across Mexico, and even some in some of the larger, more well-known, in theory, higher quality places. I remember where we were staying in a very expensive hotel in Las Vegas, and the bed was one of the worst we've ever slept on in our life. It had clearly been slept on by some very large people. The bed was massively caved in the middle, not just rolled together that way, but rolled together lengthwise. So it was almost like pooling together in the middle. My wife and I, we had to actually sleep crossways across the bed to get a good night's sleep. And luckily, my wife is only 5'2", and she could fit on the bed crossways. I had my feet hanging off, and since we were only in this particular hotel for a couple of nights, it wasn't worth the hassle of changing rooms or anything like that. So we ended up staying there. It's interesting how it feels like hotels, in many cases, they've gone backwards versus where they used to be 10, 15, 20 years ago. And vacation rentals have come forward in terms of the quality that they bring to the table. So it feels like the tables have turned in many respects. And it feels like the property owners that really care, it stands out. And the other thing I would say, and I'd love your thoughts on this, is that it actually doesn't take that much thought or care in the short-term and vacation rentals market to stand out as exceptional. It really doesn't. What we found is it was the simple things. Sometimes there was literally, we had to, in one instance, and this is not that long ago, and this happened to actually be in Texas. This wasn't even in Mexico. We had to call and get a hold of the property manager to bring toilet paper. There was 4 bedrooms in this house rented out as short-term rentals, and they ran out of toilet paper. Now, of course, all of us, since we're traveling, we didn't happen to bring toilet paper with us. This was absolutely shocking, like shocking. And so the cleaner, 9 a.m. the next morning, whatever, they brought toilet paper with them. But the fact that there wasn't a locker somewhere in the house that we could get into to get some toilet paper was just almost unforgivable, really, for people that are renting out a house full time. And so we did find wildly varying quality amongst the short-term rental market. But in general, we found that the standard, if we were to take an average across all of these, was as good, if not better, than your major hotel chains of, say, the middle tier of quality. Now, obviously, when you go up to the really expensive hotels, they tend to be amazing. They tend to have mattress toppers. They tend to be very good. But when you get into that mid-market and below in the hotel industry, now there can be wild variability even amongst the chain operators.
Yeah. And so one of the things that we're working on for September is making it easier for guests to find these vacation rentals. So as I said earlier, there's 25,000 different vacation rentals. You would never know to go to BoiseVacationRentals.com to book a stay in Boise, Idaho, right? You don't know how to book direct with these property managers or who's behind those stays. And so when you book, a place on Airbnb or Vrbo, you're taking a risk, right? You don't really know who's behind that stay. And so what we're doing is, now that we've helped our property managers set those standards, and we've developed a lot of tools to help them maintain those standards, which we can talk about, we're helping them promote their standards and launching a listing site so that as a guest, you know that where to find these homes. If you're traveling to Park City, Utah, or to Anna Maria Island in Florida, you can find the best property managers that you'll know that you're going to show up to toilet paper or to all those standards that you want in place, and have that local hospitality team there that will be there in minutes to service your stay if there's any issues.
Wow, so this is almost like an Inhaven approved kind of program, right? So this is like an Inhaven certified or Inhaven qualified or whatever it is. So you're effectively working with these property managers to become vetted and approved by you guys to make sure that they're upholding their end of the bargain and what they promise to their guests.
Yeah, and we work with incredible property managers that do hospitality so well in these markets and they're committed to these standards, and we want to feature them and really highlight them to the guests. We feel that they've completely gotten lost in the quote unquote Airbnb ecosystem. Airbnb is a huge ecosystem. It has anywhere from a stay perspective, you can stay in a room, you can stay in Barbie's house, you can stay in an urban setting, a vacation rental setting, and then the hosts are first-time hosts, part-time hosts, hosts that are true hospitality. That's their day job. That's what they think of 24/7. And so we want to help these guests find those hospitality teams that have local teams, that have a team of 30 within 10 miles of every single home in their market, and then are committed to these standards.
Wow. And this feels also, this doesn't just help your business. This helps shine a spotlight on those brands and those properties and those operators that are doing things the right way and are committed and are not trying to do things on a shoestring budget. And look, I get it, right? I understand the Airbnb, and we've looked at the Airbnb market. When you take into account, at least in Mexico anyway, when you take into account the taxes that they pay, when you take into account the damage they sustain, when you take into account, especially if guests are only staying one day at a time, there's literal daily cleaning that has to go on, daily sheet changing that has to go on. I'm not for a moment pretending that this is a simple thing to, even if you want to do the right thing, it's a hard thing to do the right thing, even if you want to do the right thing. So it feels like any assistance we can give to operators that do want to do the right thing, any tools and tips and capabilities that we can add as strings to their bow that they don't have already, it feels like the ones that do want to do the right thing, this is equipping them to be able to do that in a scalable, consistent manner. And that feels, if I had to bring one word to the table, but just based on everything you've said and just listening to you and the passion you speak with, it feels like bringing this consistency and scalability. Scalability is probably the single word that comes to mind when I think of Inhaven, is how do we make this scalable all the way from one property to 500 and everything in between? Because a lot of these operators, especially when they get started, they might only have one property, and sometimes they live in that property. So sometimes they literally live in the property. Maybe they have the master, and then they've got two or three other rooms, or maybe they've got an entire floor that they rent out. They may live on the top floor, and then they have guests on the bottom floor, or vice versa. And especially when you're first getting into this, it must be a fairly steep learning curve. My wife and I have even considered possibly setting up, because we're moving into a new townhouse at the end of this month. We were even thinking, hey, there's only three of us. There's only me, her, and the dog, and it's a 3-bedroom place with 4 bathrooms. And we were thinking, hey, maybe we want to rent a room out or something like that, and she can operate that while I operate my business or whatever. It is daunting. Even if you want to do the right thing, it feels very daunting to get into this market as a newbie.
Yeah, hospitality management is so hard. What these property managers do day in and day out, and these owners do. And so what we have done at Inhaven is say, let's partner with property managers and owners. Primarily, people come to us when they have at least 10 listings, because they no longer can have these sheets in this house and these towels in this house and these plates. They need to standardize, right? To make it scalable, as you mentioned. And so we really work with them to say, how can we drive operational efficiencies in this business? Because it's really hard. You're dealing with housekeepers that don't show up at turns, guests that have various needs. You have all your marketing campaigns, everything to get the word out there. There's just a million things on these people's plate. The last thing they want to do is worry about inventory being out of stock.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying is so right. Obviously, if I've got the same kitchenware set, for example, or the same dishes across 5 or 10 properties, it becomes pretty easy to have 1 or 2 sets sitting in my main office pantry or wherever it is that I'm holding my inventory. And then if a plate breaks or something fails or a kettle breaks or whatever it might be, I don't know, a spatula melts or whatever it is, it makes it very easy to say, okay, that's cool. I can just pluck that from my inventory and I can take that in, and it's a seamless guest experience. I don't have a set of plates that's a quarter this set, a quarter this set, and a quarter this set, mix and match. And I just go to the local Home Depot, or I go to whatever that happens to be on sale at the time, and I've got this hodgepodge. That's the term I would use in some of these rentals. It's a hodgepodge of equipment that has zero consistency to it. And I'm looking in the cupboard and I'm going, geez, okay, they went to the yard sale at the weekend and they picked up they literally, it feels like they went to the yard sale, and you look in the cutlery drawer and it's 5 different sets of cutlery in there, and I've got 3 spoons, but I got 10 forks, and it can be a wildly inconsistent experience between properties and even within a property.
It looks so unprofessional. And so what we've done is we help our property managers set those assortments, right? We say, okay, we've created these checklists. As I mentioned earlier, they don't want the search and filter that Amazon provides and get 50,000 results, right? So we have checklists that they use that are essentially organized in good, better, best, or what we call economy, mid-scale, premium, luxury. And then they go to the bedding checklist and they'll choose the duvet cover or the sheets, right? Based on that quality tier. And we are a team of merchants with over 100 years of expertise. We know what goes into great commercial grade sheeting, kitchenware, et cetera. And so we help them define their assortment, where is their property types. And then we basically create a page for them on our site that's specific to them. So it'll say blue rentals, and it will have all their products on there. So they have that communication tool to not only their internal teams, but to their owners if their owners want to purchase according to their standards. And then what we do is we set up an app that there's a QR code in the home. So when the housekeeper or inspector goes into these homes, they scan the QR code and there's a visual first app there, PWA, where they can literally, as they go through their clean, if there's a broken coffee maker or the dishes are broken, they can just click on the image and they can add a note or upload images or video to substantiate the reason that the coffee maker is broken. And then that purchase request, when they leave the home, they'll submit that purchase request. That purchase request then goes to the person responsible for purchasing for that property. They see all the things that they need for that property according to the standards. They're not going out and buying different plates or glassware. And then they just replenish using that tool. And so that's been a huge time saver. And in September, what we're launching is a more even robust inventory management tool, because a lot of our property managers purchase in bulk. So they might purchase 72 pillowcases at a time, but no one home or not many homes needs 72 standard size pillowcases. And so what we're launching is a way for them to purchase in bulk, but then allocate to the various properties and be able to see all that activity. So they know exactly what's been allocated. They can invoice their owners faster. So they're not out couples of hundreds of dollars. They can get those invoices out faster. And it's just a way to really track the inventory as it goes out into these homes.
Wow, spectacular. And I know you recently replatformed the BigCommerce e-commerce platform. Now, as someone who has worked in the BigCommerce ecosystem for years, for over a decade, I've worked in the BigCommerce ecosystem. I know a tremendous amount of this functionality that you're referring to is not native to the platform. It's custom functionality that you've used. You've used BigCommerce as the base. Okay, you've got its catalog capability. You've got its customer segmentation capability. You've got its B2B capabilities for price lists, right? And customer groups. You've got its capability around store credits. You've got all sorts of capabilities within the platform, promotional capabilities. It's got some of the best promotional capabilities in the world around its promotions engine. You've got your grouped items. You've got the ability to effectively create kits and bundles within the platform. That's all great. But a lot of the functionality that you're referring to, particularly around specific tracking of inventory on behalf of your customers, also being able to have this quick QR code functionality. None of this stuff is out of the box with the platform. And I know just how expensive it is to have custom development done on any platform, let alone obviously BigCommerce. But it sounds like you are pouring a significant amount of ongoing time, care, and investment into your web experience to the point where, and especially your mobile experience, to the point where, look, you just see this as, this is not a one and done investment. This is not a one and done solution. This is a constant, as your client needs evolve and their guests' needs evolve, you are continuing to invest and evolve your business and the way that you service those clients. So speak to us a little bit about that vision. Speak to us a little bit about your stack. Other than BigCommerce, are you running an ERP in the back end that you integrate with and manage all of your sales through and your financials? Do you have a PIM system independent of the BigCommerce platform? What type of technology layer and stack are you running to facilitate all of these amazing custom front-end experiences? And I'm guessing in some respects, especially when we're talking about some of the QR code experiences and some of the account-based experiences where, okay, this is the tier that you run at, this is what you're running across your properties. We're starting to now get into the area of custom microservices that feed data back into BigCommerce based on who's authenticated at the time. And I've seen this done a lot with automotive parts, for example, and if you're working on a project as a buyer, you can actually have a My Garage. Okay, here's the 4 vehicles that I'm working on. Here's all the items that I've bought for these 4 vehicles. Here's my wish list for these individual 4 vehicles, whatever it might be. So I've seen a lot of what you're describing in other verticals, but not in your vertical. So it feels also like you're stealing a lot of great ideas from other businesses, other operators in other categories, and say, look, we could adapt a lot of this really cool functionality to our industry and make it super seamless for our customers. But I think most people do not understand what level of sustained investment is required to make this stuff happen. You don't just magic it up. We're not quite to the stage of AI where you could just describe what you want and AI goes and creates all the code for you. We're still working with people here. We're still working with developers. We're still working with agencies. We're still working with platform vendors. This is not easy. What you are doing and what you have achieved is not easy, but it feels worth it. Hey team, I have a big favor to ask you. Please pause this episode and send the link of this episode to someone you know that you think would enjoy this content. Really appreciate you spreading the word. This is how we grow. We're not a Joe Rogan. We don't have big, massive advertising budgets, but we absolutely want to grow. We want to get the learnings from all of these episodes out to as wide of an audience as possible, and we need your help to do it. Thank you, and now back to your listening.
Yeah, it all goes down to the customer. I spent so much time with our customers and understanding every single part of their process, visiting their warehouses, visiting them, understanding where their pain points are and how we can make it better. And it's little things like I was walking through a Marriott hotel one day and you came across a housekeeping cart. And the housekeeping cart had this laminated sheet of paper with all these different issues that could arise in the room. So you can imagine the housekeeper goes into the room and they're documenting these issues through a phone. And that's where that app came out, the housekeeping app that we have today, which is visual first, and you can identify what those issues are or the needs are for the home. So it's through that. But really, I have found a great developer. My CTO is Amandeep Singh. He's just brilliant, a huge BigCommerce expert, but also just is great at thinking through and developing new tools that are proprietary to Inhaven. And he has a whole team that he runs, Chronix Agency out of India. So we just are really agile and we can develop things and test things really quickly. So we've done a lot of work on the custom build on top of the BigCommerce platform. The other areas that we have in terms of our tech stack is we use a company called FlexPoint for all of our dropships. So we don't own any inventory. We have direct API and EDI connections to our suppliers via FlexPoint. So FlexPoint's been huge in being able to connect to over 200 brands that help service these homes. And we are running, in some cases, hourly inventory or real-time inventory. So we're not selling things that are out of stock to customers. And then they also help fulfill and get all the order fulfillment information, like the shipping information from our manufacturers directly to our customers, which are loaded real-time on BigCommerce. So they've been a huge support to us, as well as we use Zoho for our CRM system. We use Zoho for forms. We do a lot of stuff with Zoho beyond analytics. We use Zoho for. Zoho is a very affordable solution, but it's been great for us as we manage our CRM and analytics. So those are the
Wow.
main things. Yeah.
Wow, what a cool, lightweight, and asset light operation. It's like Airbnb is asset light, Uber's asset light, you're asset light. And so you are still the seller of record and you are standing behind the products that you sell. So you're not a marketplace in the sense that you don't hold inventory and the fulfillment model is dropship, but you are the merchant of record. You are, for all intents and purposes, holding the inventory, even though your suppliers are doing the shipping, which means that you are responsible for setting the prices. It's not just you're saying, okay, here, come one, come all, list on our website as a marketplace, and then we'll just clip the ticket for 10% or whatever it is for everything you sell. No, you are doing curation on behalf of your customers. You are creating standards and tiers on behalf of your customers. Then you are technically not taking possession of the inventory, but you, for all intents and purposes, you are, because you're getting billed directly by those suppliers for the sale of those goods. And then they are delivering on your behalf with an integrated order sync that you're syncing your orders down to them for final fulfillment. And what are you running for accounting? Do you have a formal ERP? Do you have something like NetSuite? Are you just running something as simple as QuickBooks, Xero? What are you running for financials?
So we're doing quick. It's super asset light. We don't need a NetSuite. We're getting everything we need right now for FlexPoint. So it's very asset light. And I think I have to give credit to my team. I have an incredible team of people. Again, I have a team of merchants who spend day in and day out finding the right suppliers, curating the assortment for our customers. Again, they don't want endless aisles. They want exact opposite. So curating, pricing, they do an incredible job. And then I also think from a design perspective, or the way that we approach our e-commerce experience with our customers, Kim, who's our lead designer, she's an artist. Like she's not a typical, doesn't have the typical background of a UX, UI designer. So she really thinks outside the box in terms of the customer journey and creating tools that are super unique and differentiated.
And I think there's two words that leap out from that is curation and differentiation. And I think that nowadays, if you're just selling the same stuff as everybody else, and the reality is that your customers could probably find most of the things you sell. If they wanted to create an account on 10 different homewares websites, they could probably do this themselves. They could probably create standardized wish list across a range of websites. They could probably have an internal SOP that says when you need to go reorder, you go to when you need to reorder this item, you go to this website, you use this wish list, and they could probably recreate this experience if they really wanted to work hard enough to do this. They could probably do it by doing the legwork that you're doing on their behalf, but doing it themselves if they really wanted to. But the whole point is, these people are busy running their businesses and running their rentals. They don't want to become tech experts. They don't want to become web shopping experts. They don't want to become procurement experts. They don't want to become curation experts. They want to be an expert in looking after their guests in their properties. They don't want to do all these other things, and they don't want to build an internal tech team to be able to make this possible for them to do. And so I think that you're a shining example of the power, because it's not like you are going to contract manufacturers and having Inhaven branded products made. That's not what you're doing. You are still selling the same brand of product or brands of products. You're not the only supplier of these goods. And so what I think the key point I'm making here is that you have created something special just through the experiential and curation layer that you have created. You have not differentiated by going out and having, okay, here's my 1,000 SKU catalog that we have designed internally and have had contract manufactured and are having shipped in from China and Vietnam and Mexico and all these places, and then holding $2 million worth of custom inventory that's branded with Inhaven. That you didn't have to go down that, you didn't have to go to that extreme to build a very successful business that presents massive value to your customers. And I think there is a misconception out there many times, particularly in the B2B world, that you do need to do that. You do need to go and hold $1 million worth of inventory or $10 million worth of inventory. You do need to go and have a whole bunch of white labeled and branded product. You do need to have something that's totally different to what someone can get anywhere else. And you are a case in point. That is simply not true to become a successful B2B brand.
Yeah. And you know what? I think what's really important is you can play the price game all day, every day, right? People go after B2B and they're like, we're the lowest cost, whatever. Customers, that doesn't drive loyalty. What drives loyalty is how do you add value to their businesses? How do you provide more operational efficiencies? Again, as you mentioned, anyone can go and establish relationships with all of these wholesalers. They probably won't get the same discount that we get because we're a group purchasing organization, but you can't just be that. You have to be able to add more value. So it's really the stickiness of our tool comes with the checklist, the durable checklist, all the operational efficiencies we drive through our inventory management tools with the housekeeping teams, inspector teams. And now, again, we're going to help promote them through this listing site. So I think we're continuing to look for ways that we can add value beyond just being a shopping site.
And I like the fact that you have provided value even to the people who don't actually do the procurement within an organization. You are enabling people at every layer of the organization, right? So they could use your tools, right? They could use your tools on the website, all that sort of stuff, but not actually execute the transaction through your website, right? So somebody could use your QR codes. Somebody could use your system to build up the shopping lists and to find out what's missing in a particular property or whatever, and then they could use that shopping list or they could use that QR system and ultimately execute the transaction with another supplier if they wanted to. And I think the point here is that you have created an end-to-end solution that services every layer of the buying organization. So right from the people on the ground that are actually doing the housekeeping and having to change the sheets and having to restock these rentals and having to make sure that the guest experience, you are dealing with the pointy end of the spear all the way up to the multiple layers of bureaucracy within some of these property management companies where they might have 2 or 3 layers of sourcing within the buying organization. And so the reality is that you are providing a services layer that makes you very sticky at every stage of the procurement process, right from the boots on the ground, right up to the people that sign the checks and actually do the procurement and pay the bills. And this to me feels, and it's also a give to get scenario, right? You're building tools that people can use free of charge on your website. And ultimately, hey, look, we're trying to make it so seamless and of such good value for you to actually also complete the transaction with us that we're not even worried. That we're always going to get our piece of the pie. We're always going to win enough business by being valuable enough to the organization as a whole that we're going to win enough business that this is worthwhile. That even if we surface this technology and they just leverage it almost as an internal tool, that's okay. We're going to win enough business out of this to make it worthwhile for us and make it worthwhile for our customers.
And we're really changing the way that these property managers and these owners think about home supply, right? Home supply has traditionally been one of the biggest cost centers for these small businesses. And now with being able to market their standards as good, better, best to guests, we're turning them into a revenue generator. So by investing in these standards, we know that they're purchasing into these standards. We know that they've outfitted the Bed Bath and Kitchen in a certain way. And now that they're being promoted through the Inhaven chain scale, so it's not just a one size fits all, we have a good, better, best approach to the way that we market these homes. They're now turning home supply into a revenue generator for them.
And is this going to be a more formalized? I know you already started to talk about this, but it feels like this is going to become more formalized over the next, say, 6 to 12 months, that these tiers and these standards and this vetting process is going to become more codified to where literally you could potentially, and you might have already thought of this, where you can have an Inhaven approved or Inhaven certified with the tier, whatever, something that they can actually print off as a certification that can actually be, it's almost like the food grade standard that you get an A in the window if you're A grade certified, and it's literally taped to your window to show when people walk by your restaurant, hey, we are A food grade approved and certified here. It feels like this can become a standard that they can show within the rooms, within their property, that they can display this, they can display it as a certification within their Airbnb listings or their other listings, and the listings obviously that they're going to be able to do through effectively your property marketplace, which it sounds like you're in the process of setting up as well. So it feels like this certification process over time will create value for those property owners and property managers.
So we're creating a real network effect here, two-sided marketplace. So as these property managers go and set their standards and then maintain them through the inventory management tools that we've developed, and now we're promoting them to the guests. So on the guest facing side, we have 4 tiers of quality standards, just like the hotel industry has economy, mid-scale, upper scale, and luxury. We have what we call our 4 tier standards are canvas, composition, brushstroke, masterpiece. So think of the art of hospitality, like you layer on, you start with the canvas, then you get the brushstroke, et cetera. And so as they buy into these different standards, they have the opportunity to add this to their website. When you think about property management, if someone manages 100 homes, not every 100 home is going to be luxury. So they might be managing multiple tiers. And so this is a great communication tool to their guests to come to their site to learn, okay, I want a masterpiece, or I want to, and so they can then learn about those quality standards. And as more and more guests learn about these quality standards, they're going to seek them. And then that just creates more property management. So you've got this two-sided network effect going on there. And so the idea is that we will list these properties on our internal website for guests that will launch in September. They will also communicate those standards on their own their Book Direct websites as well. And then we've got some partnerships in the works that will help really amplify this message, because we don't have the marketing budgets that Airbnb have or Vrbo. And so we really need to work with some of these partners to communicate those standards also to guests.
And this also becomes another revenue stream for you, I'm assuming, as well, because obviously they're going to be paid to be listed on your marketplace. Because you're going to do marketing on their behalf, and you're going to have to, compete with some of the majors out there to get the word out about this capability. But then on the flip side, they're going to be marketing your marketplace on their behalf as well, and it's going to become a virtuous cycle, because the participating locations are going to be advertising effectively your marketplace and vice versa. So it feels like a win-win scenario here, but primarily the biggest winner is the guest. So the host is a winner, you're a winner, the guest is a winner, but ultimately what you're starting to do is you're starting to build an ecosystem outside of the monopoly, really. Let's call it what it is. There's a monopoly of Airbnb's a monopoly, Vrbo's a monopoly, the major chain hotels, they're monopolies oftentimes in their market, and that's why they've been able to build the type of chain that they have. But unfortunately, where we run into monopolies, we run into a scenario where maybe it started out as a very good thing to have a monopoly, but then we sometimes run into the same situation as we had in Las Vegas. Oh, we've got a monopoly in our market, so therefore our standards start to slip over time because we have a monopoly. And there's pros and cons to monopolies, but the downside of monopolies is that usually the standard does drop over time. And I think that you challenging the status quo in the industry, because I've never heard of anybody like you. Do you have any competitors? Do you consider that you have any competitors in your space?
Our approach, you can look at, there's competitors from a B2B commerce perspective, but there's nothing, no one's developing what we're developing. And as you mentioned, it's exactly what we're developing as a new ecosystem. We feel very strongly that Airbnb is too big. It's got too many types of properties on it, too many types of hosts.
And experiences for that matter. It's not just short-term rentals anymore.
Exactly. And we know that 50% of the travelers are looking for whole homes with comfortable stays, right? They're not looking for Instagram walls or these really like unique experiences. They just want to know that they're going to arrive and it's going to be very comfortable. And so we are very much focused on developing an ecosystem where you have these local hospitality teams, right? People within just a couple of miles of each of their locations that are full-time. That's their expertise, committed to these standards and managing these properties. And that's the ecosystem we're creating. And we feel that there is a huge, vast portion of this population that's looking for that. And so we're trying to develop this ecosystem with our professional property managers.
I can tell you that we will be one of your first in September. Come September, please keep me posted on when this launches, because my wife and I, we will be traveling more and more as we participate in more conferences and we travel more across the United States and visit clients, etc. We're heavy Airbnb users, but we do see massive variability in the experience. And the challenge we have found is that a property can say that they've got incredible Wi-Fi, and then you get there and it's crappy and it's average. They can say that they've got amazing beds, and then you get there and they're crappy and average. They can say that they have amazing sheets or towels in the bathroom, terry cloth towels, whatever. But then you get there and they're basically rags. They've been used so many times. They might have started out as soft terry cloth towels, but they've been washed 1,000 times, and so they're now threadbare. And so we have just found such wild, even in the same price point, we have found wild variability across our experiences. And so anybody like you that can contribute to more consistency and more transparency will pay more. Like we will usually pay more. And I think this is also something that a lot of these hosts forget, is that we've started more recently comparing with local hotel prices, where we never used to because of the wild inconsistency we got through our short-term vacation rentals. We have started now to go back to hotels and in the same area, we'll compare and we'll say, hey, look, at least with this hotel chain, we know what we're going to get. And if it's about the same price, sometimes we'll stay in a hotel. And that's only because of that wild variability. And so anybody that is going to help bring some more consistency and to help control for more of the variables that are within these properties, you're focused on bed, bath, kitchen. Like those to us are the three most important parts of our stay. Because we'll cook. When we go to these places, we'll go to the supermarket, we'll get a steak, whatever it is. All we want to do is be able to come back to the place, cook up a steak, whatever it is, be able to have our meal in the stay, and then go and stay in a nice comfy bed with nice clean sheets, with no bed bugs. Like we don't have ridiculous expectations, and we just have pretty simple baseline expectations, but you would be surprised how many times even simple expectations are not met for us as we travel.
Yeah. Brian Chesky was just quoted last week on his quarterly earnings call saying for every one booking on Airbnb, there's 9 hotels at 9 hotel bookings. And so he said reliability and consistency has become their biggest challenge. And so they tried to overcome this with the super host badge or the guest favorite badge, but we still know that 85% of reviews left on Airbnb are 5-star reviews. I just stayed at a place booked in Canada on Airbnb where before we left the stay, the host messaged us and said, hey, I'll give you a 5-star review if you give me a 5-star review. Reviews are completely broken.
Yes.
And There's lack of trust in this ecosystem, and we want to build something new and build something very transparent and trustworthy.
But I know why it's broken, and it's the same it's the same reason that the review system on Uber is broken.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because we know that unless we maintain a certain rating for ourselves as guests, we will not be allowed to stay in certain properties. And so we will oftentimes, we will give a minimum of 1 star above what we would normally rate. If we were going to give them a 3-star, we'll always give them a 4-star. If we were going to rate them a 4-star, we'll give them a 5-star, because we know that they will reciprocate in kind, and we know that they will retaliate in kind. So we as guests will know that we will have, over time, if we're too honest, we will be blocked out of staying in certain places. And what you're talking about is effectively a gamed system. And it is 100% gamed. It's 100% gamed. And we're the same with Uber. We could have a pretty average experience with an Uber, but we're going to say that we had a pretty good experience just to make sure that we are one of the first people. If we're waiting in a queue and there's 20 people along a roadway at an airport, we want to be the first ones that get chosen. And we know that if we get a poor rating as a guest in an Uber, then we won't be one of the first people chosen. We'll be overlooked by the bulk of drivers, just like we'll be overlooked by the bulk of hosts. Or a host might let you book, but then they'll cancel on you. If you have a low rating as a guest, then they'll cancel on you, sometimes last minute when they get to that booking. And so it is a totally gamed system, right? And everybody does it. And we talk about it with other guests. Like, everybody plays the same game.
Yep. Yeah. And we're not going to do that. We want trust from the guests. We want them to know that what they're booking you're going to show up to standards, and they're going to show up to a great hospitality team behind that stay.
That is enabled by Inhaven.
That's enabled by Inhaven.
I love this. Now, look, this has been such a fun conversation. I know you've talked about this sort of two-sided marketplace as being one of those things that's right at the top of your list in terms of new functionality. Anything else that you can share, like over the next 6, 12, 18 months, that's high on your priority list to add functionality-wise, or is there anything that your customers are asking for that you don't yet do that you are looking at really pushing up the priority list after you get this two-sided marketplace launched?
Yeah, we just continue to work on inventory management tools. I think it's easier to set an assortment or standards in these properties, but really making it easy for the teams to maintain them. And so we've got a lot of different features that are coming out in the future so that these teams can be more proactive and less reactive when it comes to inventory management.
Love it. And if people want to get a hold of you and they want to chat to you, I'll drop a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes, as well as a link to the Inhaven website in the show notes. But other than that, if people want to talk to you about e-com, if they want to talk to you about B2B, if they want to talk to you about your business and maybe becoming a customer of Inhaven or whatever, where's the best place to get hold of you and have a yarn?
Just email me at ashley@inhaven.com. That's the best.
Amazing. Absolutely love it. Now, look, an hour has absolutely flown by. I really appreciate your time. You're clearly passionate. You clearly love what you are doing, like the intensity in your eyes. And I noticed this at the conversation that we had at B2B Online in Chicago as well. You are super into what you're doing, and I have such respect for that, because sometimes people float through life and they take the zombie approach and they try to derive fulfillment out of maybe their hobbies or whatever it is, but they look at work as a necessary evil. And it's clear that you are not like that. It's clear that you absolutely love what you do and you can't wait to wake up every day and do it all again. So I have total respect for that. And now, as we come down to the end of our time together, I get to flip the script. I get to hand the microphone over to you, let you ask me one question, any question you like. It could be personal or professional. So Ashley Ching from Inhaven, what is your question for me today?
Who would you put me in contact with? Who should I talk to about Inhaven? Anyone else that's doing something really cool and differentiated in the B2B space?
Look, that's a really good question. I think that we have done some really cool stuff and had some really cool podcasts with the Eighth Notch and some of these other players. I think it's probably more about how could perhaps you work with your suppliers to help make their delivery and maybe even their carrier aggregation to bring your costs down. Obviously, they have to have super good, super high quality fulfillment operations on the supplier side. And so I think that there's Pretty Damn Quick, there's Phoenix Commerce, there's a few others that work very heavily in this optimized fulfillment space, optimized shipping routing space, carrier aggregation space. There's a few that, that if you, for example, let's say you were consistently having issues around speedy, efficient, cheap fulfillment from a subset of your suppliers, then I would say more important than introducing them to you, because you're not ultimately fulfilling your orders,
Right.
but you might say to your supplier, you might say, hey, look, we're consistently having these challenges. Go and speak to the guys at Pretty Damn Quick, because they're going to create a better fulfillment experience for you across all your customers. And I'm one of them, and I'm one of your biggest customers. And so I'm guessing that across your 200 suppliers, with some of them, you might be one of their biggest customers. And therefore, you can put unique levels of pressure on them around the fulfillment operations and the dispatch operations and the communication of fulfillment back to you and your systems, and also the internal logistics, the inventory holding and making sure that's accurate. I think that anything you can do to help your suppliers to be more operationally superior, the better your experience is going to be for your customers. And the ability for you to manage that supply chain more end to end and have more element of control over that supply chain is going to be a win for you. And we've had Pretty Damn Quick on. We just released the episode with Phoenix Commerce, Fenix. Go and listen to that episode. That was an amazing episode with Akhilesh. We're going to be releasing the Pretty Damn Quick episode very soon here. That's an amazing episode. Go and listen to the 8th Notch episode. So there are people working in this industry, particularly around B2B supply chain, that are doing some amazing stuff, more upstream and aggregating orders together so that they can be more efficient into deliveries into specific catchment areas, for example, which is what the 8th Notch does. There's just some real innovation happening in logistics and supply chain in the B2B world and in distributed supply chain. And we just released an episode with the guys over at their company name has just slipped my mind, but they specialize in fragile and perishable goods logistics. And I'm guessing that some of the stuff that you deal with is very fragile and perishable goods. And so that there are absolutely niche specialist players working in the B2B supply chain world that are bringing costs down, bringing efficiencies up, and bringing speed and increasing the speed at which items get delivered. And anything that you can do to help your suppliers be more operationally superior, the better off it's going to be for you and your customers.
I love it. Thank you for those recommendations. I'm definitely going to check it out. That's great.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. And I can't wait to see you at the next conference we're at together.
Yes. Thanks, Jason, so much. Thank you.
Are you a B2B or D2C e-commerce merchant? Then head over to greenwoodconsulting.net to learn how we can help you scale your business.